I think if somebody needs an organ, somebody should give somebody an organ. That's why they have organ transplants. That's why they have people who are willing to be organ donors.
And that's why you have women that are willing to have a pregnancy. You're talking about the government forcing.
You were willing to have a pregnancy the second you chose to have sex.
I'm talking about rape. You did not choose to have sex.
You still got pregnant.
Hello, peoples of the internet. This video is a debate between me and Kaylee Campbell, who is a TPUSA speaker that also does like political campaigns and stuff like that. This debate is about abortion. It is the second debate that we did. The first one was on trans issues. If you want to watch that one, you can find it in the description of this video. It is the one that I posted right before this video. Make sure to watch this one first though. And yeah, Kaylee does kind of want to hide this debate because she didn't do that great. Other than that, let's just jump into it and hope you enjoy. So yeah, now that we're going in circles, do you want to move on to the second topic?
Abortion?
Yeah.
Sure.
Basically, I personally don't like to argue about it based on what a life is. So it's not even arguing what a life is, because technically a carrot is a life and you're technically ending that life.
How is a carrot a life?
There's cells. It's living. It's considered life. A carrot is considered life. But we're talking about human life or personhood. Correct.
Did you just compare a carrot to a baby?
No, I'm not comparing a carrot to a baby. I'm being specific by saying that if we were to talk about life, we would be talking about human life and personhood, not about life, because a carrot is technically life.
Okay.
So, but even in that situation, I don't like arguing for abortion based on where human personhood or human life starts, because that is a philosophical argument that has no basis in reality. I think that anyone can believe there's a set of things that would be reasonable beliefs when personhood starts. Some people might consider it starts at conception. Some people might consider it starts at birth. Some people might consider it starts somewhere in between. Some people might even consider that a 1-year-old doesn't have personhood. But I don't care about the argument because it's philosophical and there's no real correct answer to it. So instead,
there is, based on science, but
there is no correct. It's philosophic. There is no correct answer to what is human life. That is 100% a philosophical debate. But ignoring whether a fetus is life or not, or an embryo is life or not, I personally don't believe it is, but that is irrelevant. I'd like to argue whether we should let abortion happen based on the fact that we should care about people's bodily autonomy. So I'd like to argue on the fact that someone has bodily autonomy, not on the fact whether it's life or not. So the life is a neutral thing that is unimportant.
Okay. So if we're going to apply the same logic on, let's take the libertarian standpoint from this. Do you believe that it's infringing on somebody else's rights when a mother kills her child?
So before I answer that, I have a quick thing to go through. This isn't this is just a quick thought experiment on it. So I think that even if you consider an embryo human life, that you can say that we as a society value an embryo less than we value a baby. To prove that, I would like to ask you, if there was a burning, this is a thought experiment that's been done before. I don't know who started it, but if there was a burning building and there were 2 rooms, one of them had a baby in them, and one of them had a petri dish with 2 embryos. Would you save the 2 embryos or the baby from the burning building?
You'd save the baby.
You would save the baby. So even if you consider embryos to be human life, you understand that we consider it to be valued less than a living baby.
No, because
then why would you not save the 2 embryos?
The idea, well, are the embryos in a mother, or are they just sitting in a petri dish?
They're in a petri dish, and there's 2 mothers that will give birth to them. They're not in the fire. There are 2 mothers that will absolutely 100% be implanted with these embryos. It's like in vitro fertilization clinic that's also a hospital, and these embryos will be implanted in the mother. Would you save the petri dish of 2 embryos or the baby?
You would save the baby.
So then,
but I understand your hypothetical situation here with the 2 embryos, because it's 2 babies or 1 baby, whatever. But with the whole argument behind abortion is that you have a mother, a living, breathing mother that has grown this child because it has been put inside of her, and she's growing it inside of her body and going to the doctor to take the abortion pill, or going to the
So yeah,
doctor to
but
get
no. But before we get to that, I just want to just finish this first. So
right.
if you were to save the baby over the two embryos, which any human, so if anyone says that they'd save the two embryos over the baby, they're either lying or they're like hate babies. It's either one or the other. But so
Right.
because that is in a way acknowledging that even if you were to consider both of them to be human life or have personhood, that you would still consider the baby to be have more value.
Right.
So it's not necessarily, it's not less saying that it's not saying that it's not life. It's just saying that you would consider the baby of the more value. So specifically on your saying, your argument is basically the mother is you have a mother and you're doing the libertarian argument of if you have a if
Infringing on somebody else's
someone else's right to
which
live.
you would be infringing on the baby's life to live. Yes.
So that's where my bodily autonomy argument comes up, where basically you have a right to your bodily autonomy. If you were put in a situation where you need to use your organs to save someone that's going to die, the government cannot force you to give up an organ to save another person. In the same sense, and we even, in not just a living person, a dead person, we have organ cards. If you died and someone can use your organ to stay alive, even as a dead person, you still have the right over your bodily autonomy to not save another person. So as the United States government understands, respects bodily autonomy, even with a dead person, which I don't necessarily 100% agree with the dead person thing. That's a debate for another time. I'm not 100% sure on that, whether I think that a dead person should have the rights over their organs or not. But I do 100% agree that a living person, we have two kidneys, right? And I don't think a living person should be forced to give up their kidney to save another human. So we do have that right over the bodily autonomy, valuing it over life.
Right. But so for the baby to be inside the mother, they made the choice to conceive that baby regardless. The baby's in there.
Well, they didn't necessarily make the choice, but an action that happened with them involved led to the baby.
Well, they chose to make that decision, and they chose to make that baby.
So first of all, rape. Do you think abortion should be allowed in rape?
Are you going to bring up the less than 1%?
No. This is just a hypothetical. Do you think that, like, specifically for this is not like this is just to continue with the debate. Do you think that if a woman gets raped, that she should have a fair time period to be able to get abortion?
No.
So it doesn't matter to you that much whether she was involved in the choice of having that baby come to life?
I think that we shouldn't be teaching the narrative that somebody's life is worth less just because of the way that they were conceived. And it is an unfortunate situation that I know many women have had to go through and deal with before. And it is a heavy topic that is typically used to emotionally trip people up in these types of debates. And with the rape scenario, that baby still has been created. And if born, like many testimonies from people who were products of rape have made, that they are happy that they're alive and they've created a whole life out of their entire story, regardless of how that they were conceived. We aren't the people to tell others that, oh, you shouldn't have that baby because...
But your counter to my argument, basically, your counter to my argument on the organ transplant, basically, like where like you don't give up your organ to keep another person alive. Your counter to that was saying that the woman chose by having sex, even if she didn't want the baby, she chose by having sex to have a chance of having a baby. But if she's raped, she doesn't have that choice in the same way that an organ donor wouldn't be involved in the position where the person would need their organ.
Give me 1 second. My boss is literally texting me at 10 o'clock saying that she has to call me for no reason.
All right, that's fine.
I'm just responding to her, telling her that I'm doing something. So your claim is that we have organs and we have the bodily autonomy choice over giving our organs away because, you know, we have our organ donor cards and we're allowed to make that decision. But
and we also have the bodily autonomy to decide not to use our bodily resources, which could be our organs or like our womb, to keep someone else alive.
Right. So the difference between a baby, because a baby is not considered an organ, and one of my kidneys is considered my organ, the human life, with taking away the argument of whenever human life exists, we can take the path that it is a human life.
Sure.
And it's a difference between your own organ and another human being inside of you.
I'm not comparing,
that has its own little tiny organs.
I'm not comparing the organ to the baby. I'm comparing the person that needs the organ and will die without your kidney to the baby. These are both living humans. And the organ, giving your organ is giving your body to keep that other person alive in the same way that a pregnant woman would be giving her body to keep the baby alive. The baby is compared to the person who needs the organ, not to the organ itself.
Okay. So you disagree, and you're claiming that we shouldn't have to give the organ to the person dying on the table.
No, I don't think you should have to give your kidney to a person that's dying on a table. I think that the government should not be able to force you to give that organ.
Right. So this goes back to, and keep in mind, like, how did you feel about the whole Roe v. Wade thing? Because it's just back up to the states now, right?
Yeah, I think that bodily autonomy is a thing that should be protected federally, and I believe that bodily autonomy should be protected, and because I believe that it should be protected, I think it should be protected in total, and that you should not be able to take away someone's basic human rights because you're a different state from another.
Okay. So again, with the baby being inside the mother and the organ going outside and going into another person, that's also a different scenario, because we, again, are taking away the factor of the mom made this decision to have this child, because the rape cases are less than 1%.
I know, but you still say that you still agree that rape, you still think that rape should not, even in cases of rape, you shouldn't have an abortion. So I'm not talking about like that it's 1%. I have another argument for the rest of them, but my argument right now is specifically for the cases of rape. I'm talking about the moral consistency of whether you believe that we should value bodily autonomy, because you agree that you shouldn't be forced to give up your organ. So specifically in the case of rape, why would that be different?
Because it's still a living, human, breathing baby.
So is the person that needs the organ.
I'm not going to... An organ is not a living...
I'm not saying the organ. The person that needs the organ is a living, breathing human.
Right. Yes.
And so is the baby.
I don't know why you're comparing organs to babies.
I'm not. Stop saying I'm comparing organs to babies. I'm comparing the person that needs the organ to the baby. The baby is a living human. Under your ideology, you believe it's a human, okay? And the baby is using the mother's organ to stay alive. And the government, you're saying that the government should be able to force the mother to use her organs to keep this baby alive. But you also think that the government can't force another human to use his organs to keep another person alive. I'm not comparing the baby and the organ. I'm comparing the human that needs the organ and the baby that needs the organ.
I think if somebody needs an organ, somebody should give somebody an organ. That's why they have organ transplants. That's why they have people who are willing to be organ donors.
And that's why you have women that are willing to have a pregnancy. You're talking about the government forcing.
You were willing to have a pregnancy the second you chose to have sex.
I'm talking about rape. You did not choose to have sex.
You still got pregnant.
Oh,
I'm not falling for this whole emotional.
I'm not talking about emotional. I'm talking about your moral consistency. I'm talking about a situation, rape, where the woman did not choose at all.
What makes her not want to have this child just because she got raped?
Because she doesn't want to. She doesn't want to have a baby from
her body was her body was created to raise the child, grow the child inside the body. Therefore, there's nothing stopping her from having the child. And
there's nothing stopping the guy from giving up his kidney. He has 2 kidneys to save the other person's life. But you don't think the government should be able to force the guy to give up his kidney?
I don't care about the kidney. If somebody says, or if the government tomorrow is like, hey, you have to give your kidney to this person,
You're okay with
There's
that?
more people dying who are organ donors than like the government calling me tomorrow and being like, "Hey, you have to give your kidney
So
to
no, we have
person
a
down the
shortage
street."
in organs. People die because they can't get organs every single day. Hundreds of people every day. It could be thousands. People
That's
die
so
every
sad.
single day because they do not have organs. And so it's not like so there would be people's lives saved if the government could get a random healthy person and force them to give up an organ that they don't need. So why don't you think the government should be able to force someone to give up their bodily autonomy in that case? But you do think in the case of a baby.
Because the baby is growing inside the mother, and this isn't about taking out an organ and giving it to provide that life for that other person. The baby, one, if you want to take the morality standpoint from it, first of all, you're growing a baby inside of you. If you want to, like, I'll take the emotional route for the sake of the left wanting to do that all the
It's not
time.
the emotional route. It's the
It
moral
is your
consistency.
child. It is your child, right? The mother is literally the mother of the baby.
Why does it
Now,
matter whether it's the child?
the difference between that is me giving my kidney to somebody down the street. I don't have any connection to them. I don't know them. I
Okay,
don't.
so then adoption. Okay, so if I'm adopted actually.
I'm adopted too.
Yeah, I'm
actually.
adopted. So if my or let's just say you have someone who's adopted and they have never met their parents. Their parents gave them up for adoption. They never met them. They have no connection towards them. You think that they have some, and their parent were to need a kidney. You think that the government should be able to force the adopted child to give their parent a kidney because they're blood related? There is that blood connection.
These arguments don't correlate because they involve two different scenarios.
These are exactly analogous. These are exactly analogous in every single way. You have zero emotion. You have zero like social connection to a baby. You have blood connection. You have zero social connection to your birth parents that you've never seen, but you have blood connection. Why should a woman's bodily autonomy be broken, but another person's bodily autonomy should not be broken for their birth parent?
Because at the end of the day, the main argument about abortion is that you are quite literally ending a human life. Because I know you don't want to have that argument, but not having that argument by precedent kind of invalidates everything else, because the beginning of the entire argument is whether it is a human life or not, which it is. That can't be.
I don't care whether
disproven.
it's a human life or not. Like
well, I thought you cared about. I thought you cared about lives.
I do. But I care about bodily autonomy. I value bodily autonomy over life.
What about the baby's bodily autonomy?
Well,
what
about the guy? What about the guy who needs the organ? What about his bodily autonomy? He's going to die. He's a life that's going to die if you don't do something. If you don't break your bodily autonomy to save this person's life, he is going to die. And the same thing for the baby. Same thing for the baby.
Go back and forth.
You have no answer. You have no answer.
Because you're comparing a full-grown human to a baby, and we all know that the arguments behind abortion for so long...
I'm not comparing it to baby. I'm comparing it to embryo, but I've just been saying baby because that's the word that you've wanted to use, and I don't care whether you consider it a baby or not. But
that's fine. That's the first problem with all of this, and that's why you believe what you believe and I believe what I believe, because you don't see the logic behind.
No, I believe what I believe. I believe what I believe because I value bodily autonomy like every other human values bodily autonomy over life. I do value human life.
No, you don't, because you don't value the baby's life growing inside of the mother.
And you don't value the
you don't value
the guy that needs the kidney's
life.
You don't value the guy that needs the kidney's life. You don't think the government should be able...
The guy that needs a kidney does not matter.
Why? Wait. So his life doesn't matter?
Because that's a hypothetical situation.
It happens all the time. Happens all the time. There are people that need kidneys that die because they cannot get them. There are people who need organs that die because they cannot get them.
Yes. There's also people that get in car crashes every day, and people that kill themselves every day. And there's also people that have heart attacks every day.
And there's also people who have pregnancies every day who do not want them.
That's unfortunate, because the majority of them made that decision.
And we're talking about the ones that did not.
And get pregnant.
We're talking about ones that did not.
The less than 1% that don't matter.
You don't care about that 1%? You don't care about the 1% of raped women. Like, it's not an
We're
emotional
talking
argument.
about the other 98% that
Do you want me to make
matter,
okay?
because that's the majority of the abortion argument.
I can't even make the argument for the 99% if you won't even agree that the 1% should be allowed to have an abortion. The 99%. Why would I make the argument for the 99%
that don't
if
want
you
their
don't care about the
because
1%?
They're lazy. Ruin it for the 1%, because we can take the 99 and the 1% for every other scenario ever in politics.
You've absolutely like 100% lost on the case of rape. Like, we're talking in the case of the 1%. Let's say I don't know the exact stats, but let's just say 1%. The 1% that are from rapes. You have no reason why.
It's not common enough. It's not common enough to sit here and have an hour-long argument about it when the majority of abortions that are performed are due to women who just don't want the baby, have been told that they're too stupid or too poor or whatever to have the baby.
You have no moral argument why women who have been raped should not be able to abort their kid. Now, the thing is, most of Americans...
Because I don't think they should be able to abort their kid because it's their kid.
I would say probably around 90% of Americans believe that you should be able to get an abortion if you were a rape victim. Like, probably like 90% of Americans believe that. If you're a rape victim. Within a certain time period, they believe that. But the thing is...
I don't believe in murder, so... That's like what it boils down to, essentially. It is murder. Because it's ending a human life.
And so is not giving the guy the organ. His life is now ended.
I'm not murdering somebody because I don't give them my kidney.
You're not murdering the baby. You're simply removing it from the dependency.
Because
you're removing it from your organ. You're removing it from the dependency.
There's already something that was causing his death, and that's why he needs this organ so bad.
Yeah, the baby can't live without the mother.
My not giving my kidney to this man is not murdering him. But my going and choosing to go to an abortion clinic while I'm growing a baby inside of me and getting it sucked out or chopped up or taking the pill to destroy it and stop its heart, all of that is acts of murder. Choosing not to go give a kidney to some random guy that probably, like, whatever reason he needs an organ, that's not murder.
You're removing the baby from an organ dependency on the mother. That is all you're doing. The baby cannot exist without the mother's organs, in the same way the guy cannot exist without the other guy's kidney. You're simply removing the baby from that dependency because it does not have a right over your body.
It does, though. It's literally different.
Why is it different? You have yet to explain why. Your first reason was because you think...
Because you just compared that. And the murder aspect of it, ending a life by going and getting an abortion, and then ending this life by not giving somebody a kidney, those don't correlate.
They literally do. It's organ dependency. The fetus cannot exist outside of the woman. Like, it needs the woman to survive in the same way the man needs the guy's kidney to survive. It needs the other human's organs to survive. And the other human has a right to decide what happens with their body.
Okay, so organ dependency as a whole, bodily autonomy, whatever. You want to talk about the baby relying on the mother for that life. Throw a 1-year-old out there. He still has to rely on it. Should we kill 1-year-olds?
So the difference there is that the mother has no option other than to be... The mother has no option other than to remove the baby or keep it in there. But once the baby is born, the mother has the option of putting the baby up for adoption. The mother has the option of raising the baby. And actually, in America, you can legally just drop a baby off at a hospital, no questions asked. Like, you will not be punished for that.
And a fire station.
Or a fire station. So yeah, you have the ability, once it is born, you have the ability to get rid of it, which doesn't end in its life.
But does it still need something to depend on? Because it's the baby itself. Yes, it does. You can't just drop a baby off outside. The baby itself has to still rely on another.
Because the mom has options.
Rely on another person.
The mom has options to no longer. So the mom has an option that doesn't kill the baby. So I value life, but I value bodily autonomy over life. So when the mother has an option let me finish this here. Let me finish this here. You asked me a question, so let me finish answer the question. So the baby has... The thing is, the mom now has options where the
What if she
where the
doesn't have those options?
She does. She does in America. If she didn't have those options, it would be the same thing. But she does have those options. She can put the baby up for adoption. She can give it to a hospital. We set up the systems.
You understand how hard the adoption process is? Like,
Well, then
I know
drop
you
it
and
off at
I
a
were
hospital.
both. You and I were both adopted.
I was adopted before I was born. The adoption process is not hard for the mother that puts them up for adoption. It's hard for the people that want the baby. And there's plenty of people who want babies. There is.
I'm just glad you didn't bring up the whole foster care thing.
Well, yeah. So the thing is, you have the opportunity to remove the baby from your bodily autonomy, to no longer have a bodily dependency on you without killing it. And because you have those other options, and I value life, you should then take those other options.
But you don't value life.
I do.
Value bodily autonomy.
I value life.
You said you value bodily autonomy over life.
Yes.
And that invalidates this entire argument, because then
why the life you can now get rid of its bodily dependency on you without killing it. And because I value life, you can now it's different because it's baby.
You don't value human life.
Yes, I do. Second to bodily autonomy.
No, you don't.
Just the same way that you value bodily autonomy over human life when you say that you shouldn't be forced to give up your organs.
We're just going to keep going in circles.
Well, you have no answer. Like, that's the thing.
I do have an answer for you.
Asking questions, and I have an answer to every single question.
You literally cannot comprehend what human life even is, because you chose to not have the argument as to what life is.
Because it's a philosophical argument.
How do you claim to value human life if you can't even tell me what it is? Because you won't choose to understand when human life even starts.
I have done this argument on your grounds. I have this entire argument. We have assumed that a fetus is a human life. This entire argument has been on your moral grounds of life. I have conceded that ground, even though I don't agree with it, and you still don't have a response to the questions that I'm giving you. You ask me questions, and I have a direct response of why it still fits within the moral framework, within that moral framework every single time, but you don't have a response to why yours does. Why your moral framework is consistent here.
We've sat here and gone in circles about an organ donor.
Yes.
And a baby.
No. The organ receiver and the baby. The baby's also an organ receiver.
And the baby.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what is your original question? Since we've just gone
my original question is that I don't think that the government should be able to force you to give up your bodily autonomy to keep someone else alive under any circumstances. And you agree with that under one circumstance, but then you can't describe why this other circumstance is different, other than it's a baby.
I just straight up disagree with you on that.
So you think you should be able to force the government should be able to force you to give up your kidney?
If this so-called man that's so-called dying for whatever reason, like, that's not. It has no correlation, but to play your game, then yes, because it's just
okay.
No.
So you're basically what you're saying is that you should be able to be forced to give up your kidney to keep another person alive.
Sure, if I value human life, because clearly I value human life more than you do, because you value bodily autonomy over human life.
Okay, then I'll take it if you're willing to concede that. Then why can't the government kill one person to use their organs to keep 7 people alive? If you value human life, you now saved 7 lives and killed 1 life. If you only value human life, you're now saving 7 times the amount of lives. If you're willing to give up on the organ argument.
This has nothing to do. You do realize that this has nothing. You can use theology all you want, but this has
it's
nothing
not theology.
To do.
What do you mean? This is not theology. This is.
You're using a different example of the trolley situation.
The trolley situation?
Yes, the one where it's like the trolley's going down this way.
If you say that you only value human life, you would. Well, the trolley situation. The trolley situation isn't bodily autonomy. That's the change of it. But if you're talking about human life, if you don't value, it's not bodily autonomy. That's why it's different from the trolley situation. But if you don't value bodily autonomy and you only value human life above bodily autonomy, there would be no reason why you cannot.
If we're valuing bodily autonomy, then we have to take the baby into consideration, because it's It has its
No.
own rights over its own bodily autonomy. Therefore, that completely invalidates
And
the whole human life over bodily autonomy, because that baby is, number one, not part of the mother, has its own rights as a living
and neither
human
the guy is
being.
not part of the mother either. The guy that needs the kidney is not part of the mother either. And you just admitted that you think that we should be forced to give his kidney. And if you think that we should be forced to give his kidney because you value human life above bodily autonomy, then you would also think that you should be able to kill someone to save 7 people by giving up their organs. You should be able to take someone's full bodily autonomy away to save them. Like, you have no moral consistency. I've given you, with this entire argument has been under your framework that a fetus is a human life, even though I disagree, and you have 0 answers to that.
Because you won't even tell me why you don't think it's a human life. That would have been the beginning of this entire thing. There's no relation to organ donation and an abortion.
Fetus is a human life. Sure. It does not change anything that we have talked about, because I've conceded that a fetus is a human life.
So then the human lives, bodily autonomy, taking the baby and its own bodily autonomy. If you want to agree that it is a human life, then every human life, according to your perfect world, has ownership over its bodily autonomy. Why does this baby not have ownership over its bodily autonomy?
Removing someone else from a dependency on someone else's bodily autonomy is not breaking their bodily autonomy, in the same way that the letting the guy die would not be removing his bodily autonomy. It's the same thing. The letting the guy die is not canceling his bodily autonomy. Letting the fetus die by removing it from its dependency on the mother is
then
also
we're
not.
Back to the choice. Then we're back to the choice of I don't have any, like, I did not conceive this man on the table who needs a kidney. I did conceive the baby that I am growing inside of my body.
And I talked about that. You have the blood relation to your birth parents.
If you can't see, like, from
you're only arguing blood relation here.
No, but if you can't see, like, the murder aspect behind it and then the infringing on the human rights aspect behind it, then this entire argument is invalid, because you are choosing not to understand that it is infringing upon another person's rights, and it is murder, which is harming somebody else, which, according to your logic way back on the other argument, is that you don't like infringing on other people's rights and you don't like causing harm to others, but abortion is directly impacting somebody else and directly harming somebody else. So why are you taking your logic and choosing to apply it
I'm
here?
not choosing to apply it. My logic is very simple. I have given you the fact that a fetus is a human life, even though I don't agree with it, but we have argued on those grounds and on those bases. My entire thing is that human life is extremely valuable. Human happiness is extremely valuable. I can make arguments why abortion leads to more human happiness, but that's a separate thing, because we haven't even moved off this yet. But my 2 main things, I value human life, and above human life, I value bodily autonomy, because if I didn't, there'd be so many other negative consequences of not valuing bodily autonomy. The consequences that I have shown you and told you about of not valuing bodily autonomy over human life. So, like, my morals are very simple: human life and bodily autonomy, because our entire society would not make sense if we did not value bodily autonomy over human life.
I have somebody who would love to genuinely debate you on this, and probably has a similar mindset to you, because they claim that they're a libertarian, but although they're pro-life.
Okay.
And he's texting me, he's begging me to debate you on this.
Yeah, sure.
Do you want?
Yeah.
I can add him in.
I'm fine.
Hold on.